And we are going live in three, two, one. We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Real Time Talk with Eagle 3D Streaming. My name is Quentin Anderson. I am the CEO and co-founder of Eagle 3D Streaming and your host for today's show. We have an awesome guest with us today, Pierre Couture. He lives in Montreal and he is the founder and innovative thinker of daregraphic. I've known Pierre for 2 years or so, and at this point, I consider him a friend. Pierre is a computer graphic expert. He is a remote graphics specialist. He is ex Autodesk and ex Lenovo. And he is definitely one of the leaders innovating and pushing the pixel streaming technology. So we are extremely lucky to have him on the show today. And just a fun fact about Pierre, he is credited in over 20 feature films as a visual effects producer. So I think he now has the record for IMDb citations on our podcast at this point. Let me explain real quick how the podcast works for any new viewers today, and then we can get into having our awesome discussion with Pierre. We've asked people to submit questions beforehand, and we will discuss them live on the show. So if you're watching right now, you can still post a question in YouTube, and we'll discuss it. We'll talk about each topic for roughly 4 minutes, and this is all about the viewers. So if you have a question, please do not hesitate to post it in YouTube. After each 4 minutes, we'll switch to topics, and we'll just move through every single one of the questions as we have an awesome conversation with Pierre. So Pierre, how are you doing? Are you ready to get rolling?
Oh, thank you for having me, Quentin. Love to have a chat with you. We're gonna make it like private, but we'll let everybody in our regular discussion. So let's do that.
Let's do that. Let's do that. And let's start right now with the first question. I'm sure it's on everyone's minds. Let's demystify a little some things first. What exactly is pixel streaming? What is streaming? What is it not? And what exactly is streaming for you?
Sure, sure. So, streaming, the word streaming has been there for a very long time. I've always been extremely involved, interested, testing myself, lots of different streaming technologies. So everybody have an opinion. Most people will think about streaming, like streaming their video from, their provider,
Yep,
from that point of view.
got them fired up.
Okay, very good. So I don't see them, so I'll trust you. You'll be able to switch them. So
Yes.
basically, there is the concept of doing application streaming that's been doing for a very long time. Where enterprise. Oh, by the way, I should state that there's so many ways to skin that cat. Streaming is a very very broad word. So we'll focus today on enterprise. So the example I'm going to bring and the explanation is all about enterprise level, not consumer based. So there's the application component. So you stream an app, and basically your local computer will act somewhat actively, and the remote will provide some component, which is basically just the application. There is the graphic part, which has been popular over the last, 10, 15 years, where graphic intensive, what we call power user, need something more oomph, but they do not have the capacity locally. And the very end is a file streaming. So you transfer a file, from enterprise level, could be a Word document, or it could be something bigger. It could be a video. You can stream a video internally for your boss to approve, or those kind of things. So if you go to the second slide,
Okay.
then we go a little bit more into the details of what that is, which is basically another layer of this. So basically, let me just bring my own version here. So basically, you go into web. So the web is Chrome, Safari, whatever. It provides you with that component or that application. If you go one step up, you say, well, I don't want just one or a few apps. I want a full desktop. Could be Windows. Nowadays, we can do it with Mac, but you get a full desktop environment. So you can have multi apps, and your full desktop is remote. When you go into graphic, I divide them between 2D and 3D just because we need to find a way to isolate those different components. So 2D will be video editing, Photoshop, those kind of things. 3D will be more either full 3D app or gaming, like gaming remotely. And again, the media will be a file. So if you go to the third and next slide, I'll show
Okay.
you with some example. So again, from an enterprise level, one of the most popular streaming application on the web has been Citrix. There's many other. I just had to pick one, otherwise the slide will go forever. A desktop version will be Windows 35. This is not Office 365. This is Windows 365, which is quite different. It's been launched last year by Microsoft, which you have a full-blown Windows 10, Windows 11 environment provided and shared by Microsoft, but others vendors provide this as well. From a graphic standpoint, Toridici has been there for a very long time. Again, there's other vendors, but you take a protocol, a highly professional protocol, and you connect to a machine remotely. That has been very popular. On the 3D side, my preferred option is Eagle 3D because you can stream a full-on Unreal app, which we call Pixel streaming, from vendor like Eagle 3D, and you've been a great partner of ours. So I think, in our mind, this is the simplest, most affordable, long distance, low latency offering. And I put OneDrive to give an example of what the streaming a media file. So this is, very, very short, consolidated version of what streaming is. And of course, we can think about, Netflix and Disney and other streaming for consumer entertainment. If I would do a complete streaming design, that would be like 70 slides. So keep that to a minimum.
And one of the questions on my mind is what is the difference between a 2D stream and a 3D stream? What would you say?
What we consider 2D is based on the application itself. So a 2D stream will be a 2D application. So when you do, for example, video editing or Photoshop or things that are, the layer or the end output is 2D images, requires very fine refinement of the pixel itself. It requires a level of latency that you cannot accept, drop frame or anything like that. If you go on the 3D side and you have a 3D model and you spin it around, if you have a glitch when you turn it, because nothing is perfect, the internet is not perfect. So if you spin that model around and you have a small glitch, you say, oh, okay, maybe there was something on the internet at that point. But when you play back a video that is remote, and you want to make sure that your final output is final quality, if you get a little bit of a lag, then you say, what's going on? Is it the app? Is it my video? Is my recording is wrong? So that's why we're going to put more finesse and deployment in a 2D environment, because the user just cannot live with any latency problems, which 3D can give away a little bit. The user might not even see it if there's a small lag. In 2D, even a regular viewer would say, "Oh, something's wrong there. There's a miss in the streaming," and that's really, really a problem for users.
Hmm. And so you are an expert in remote graphics, but there are also regular graphics. So what is a remote graphic in your mind, and when exactly does a graphic become remote?
All right, so the way I see it, and again, there's no real standard, neither from a nomenclature or concept. So we go as we can. So we name things. We think the way we think. So my vision of remote graphic is a system that is locally far from me, that have a computer graphic component, which is basically a graphic card. From vendors like NVIDIA, AMD, and now Intel will have their own discrete graphic. So from the standpoint that you have a graphic card, you interject a lots of potential problems from a performance, from a ease of deployment, from a quality of the network. So we divide remote graphic in that category that have a graphic card and non-graphic. So there's lots of remote desktop, remote tools, and other things. This is how I see remote graphic is as soon as you put the graphic card, there's many other things. I mean, the user expect more refined detail of quality, performance, low latency, which a regular remote desktop user say, I'm okay. I can live with some glitches, and the price is also very, very different.
Mm. So is pixel streaming a type of remote graphic, or what is the relationship between pixel streaming and remote graphics?
We do consider pixel streaming be part of remote graphic because if you take the if you take the enterprise level for a second, it is a game that you play remotely, but instead of for pure entertainment, it's for selling a product, showing a real estate. At the end of the day, it have a commercial component to it, but the technology underneath is a game that you play, remotely. It have the same basic hardware component. It have very similar software requirement. It have the same latency requirement. So at the end of the day, for us, pixel streaming is one type of remote graphic. We could even say to a point where the same user with the same machine can do content creation in Unreal and flip the switch with exactly the same remote local machines and network, and then stream the game or stream the app with exactly the same environment. So for us, from a technology standpoint, it's very, very pixel streaming is part of remote graphic.
Mm. And for any users that are watching and hearing the words or terms pixel streaming for the first time, how would you define what pixel streaming actually is?
Well, first, it's a really cool brand. If you think about it, Pixel streaming, you're pushing Pixel, stream over the network. So the flip side is people will think streaming more like a continuous linear, you press play or you click and this thing will do something on its own, which is not the case. You have to interact with it. So the interactivity of it is very different from streaming a video or movie or anything like that. So it does send the pixel from this remote machine to you, the user, but you have to do something. It's a game, so you have to play, you have to move around, you have to navigate, you have to click on interface, and eventually, if you stop doing anything, the system will hold. Like if you're doing a, you know, first person shooter game, if you don't do anything, nothing is going to happen. So for me, pixel streaming is another brand for that is very specific, that is for Unreal, that is for sharing an app, either for gaming purposes or for selling a product. But it is pushing pixel to the user, but the interactivity is the defining factor with other type of streaming technology.
Mm. And so where does daregraphic fit in the whole pixel streaming landscape? How do they fit into everything related to pixel streaming?
So first and foremost, our history has always been, as you said, doing remote graphic for the content developers. That's what we've been doing. So we're helping enterprise and users and artists to find the best solution, and we call that the seven chain. So it's a chain with seven components, seven links, and then we go in and we act as best practice. We bring our technology and our knowledge to help them deploy those users to create the content. That's a pure standard remote graphic. Some of those users, which we call the power user, will say, well, I have those assets. Now I want to distribute them. I want to share them. So content creation is one thing. Streaming is a different request. Again, as I said, it's very similar technology, but the market and the user are very different, right? So we come in as a consultant, and we help them deploy either from a geography, from the content itself, providing them with what we call our network monitoring tool, where we can monitor the network to make sure there's no glitch or problems, do the proof of concept. But again, it takes pretty much 80%, 90% of what we've been deploying, and our expertise in pixel streaming is another layer of that, but it's very similar. So we're helping enterprise and artists and studios to deploy a distribution of their 3D asset for their customers and market.
Mm. And so when you're talking to a new enterprise, one of your new enterprise customers, what are some of the challenges of pixel streaming and the pitfalls and things that you may like to make your new customers aware of, and how do you address those challenges?
Well, of course, Quentin, you and I have been talking about this quite often. It is the cost, and it's not necessarily that it costs. Um, it's very costly solution. It's just that they don't know, right? And then they imagine the worst case scenario, like any good manager would say, okay, my worst case scenario is, and then they multiply that by the number of user that may stream their asset at the same time, and suddenly they say, what? I cannot do that. They've been, our enterprise customer have been used to a web, server that can serve thousands and thousands of users in a second, and suddenly their mindset have to change. So the first thing is the cost, but that technology, is affordable. But the way they think about it is, well, I'm going to need thousands of graphic card, and that's going to be very so. So that's our first thing we do. So we go in and we debunk that concept, which is you don't need 25,000 user at the same time, because every user will have a duration, which we call a session, and that session will be limited in time, and then the next person and the next person. So that's the first thing. The second thing is everybody needs something custom. There's no such thing as a standard pixel streaming onboarding process where you and I can build, a recipe and say, hey, follow the recipe. It's every single one is customized. Customized because they have a way to present or stream the asset. They want to have it highly configurable, like they want people to change the color and the shape, or they want it to be, available on any mobile device, and then the interface goes small on a phone. Everybody have a different opinion on what they want to do. So, and some of them have high skill on a 3D asset but lower skill on the web interface, and some of them is the opposite.
Hmm.
Some of them would like to have extremely high-end quality, because pixel streaming can do movie quality 3D imagery with reflection and textures and smoke and all of that stuff. They don't know how to create those type of high quality movie photoreal images. So depending where the customer come from, we're here to help them out, to triage in all of those offering. Where should they start? And again, to debunk lots of misconception about cost and about quality and streaming, network bandwidth and those kind of things.
So, and one of the things you mentioned earlier in the show was talking about network monitoring. And I know that you also specialize in network monitoring capabilities. How does that relate to pixel streaming?
So basically, one thing, without going in any too much technical detail, but at the end of the day, any streaming have a sender and a receiver. It sounds very basic, but even that wording is not really standardized. But let's talk about the sender and the receiver. So the sender is the machine, the server that have the GPU in your app, and that is usually quite easy to qualify and define and build. We've been doing computer graphic for so many years now.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty easy. On the receiving end, you either have a good high-speed network or you don't, and you either have a good modern device, modern would be 5 years and lower, or not. That's quite easy to define as well. What's really hard is what's in the middle. It's called the internet that has never been designed for a real large, massive streaming of everybody at the same time. So I'm not saying it's not working. I mean, internet's working very well for that matter, especially in a epidemic COVID as we are today. Everybody's streaming. We're streaming right now, you and I. But at the end of the day, that streaming, if you want to keep the quality and the constant, refresh rate, so the users see things very fluid, the internet becomes a really big gray zone. So what we've done at daregraphic from the early stage of our foundation, which is develop and deploy a network. So we monitor the network, right? We look at the sender, the receiver, everything in between, whatever, if it's a switch, a VPN, a server, the ISP, the device of the user, the web, all of it. We monitor it and then we can see if there's a glitch. And guess what? There's always a glitch. There's always one. Where and why? That's the answer we're able to help our customer to answer. And then we can fix those problems or provide a solution for them and help customer to optimize their experience for their user, because at the end of the day, my number one goal is to make sure the end user either be an enterprise power user that create content or a potential customer that's going to buy a product from our mutual customer. For me, the end user experience have to be totally transparent, super simple, and fluid. And network monitoring allow us to achieve that goal.
Hmm. And so who is the perfect type of customer for pixel streaming? What types of enterprise, what types of products, what's suited for pixel streaming? What do you think?
Based on our own experience, I would say the customer have to be an innovator because there's many things in that technology that have not been defined yet that we're learning as we go. It's what, 2 years old, right? Maybe three if you go from the infancy of the initial one. But the first ever public example that I saw was the Pagani project, and that's probably just a bit more than a year old now. I think it was November. And November was not even public-ish. Anyway, so a young technology like that with lots of highly complex component require customer to be innovative, because innovation requires that you're willing to make a bet or you're willing to risk that maybe it won't be perfect, or at least the streaming of the user will be perfect, but the way to get there might be a little bit more, convoluted than you would normally do with, oh, here's a web page, build a web page, and host the web page and share the web page, right? So that would be the ideal customer. So they're a little bit more on the innovative side. They're willing to take a risk. They're outside the box thinker. It have to be the basic 101 starting point. And then out of those, if they already have 3D asset, their onboarding will be much faster because they have the core component to stream. And from another component, I think the one who are looking at it from a proof of concept that want to try with a sample of user, not necessarily do like a big, large global launch of a product. The one who are saying, for example, they have a distribution network, they have a reseller network, people who know them that can have like a private smaller group will be the ideal candidate because they can lower their costs, test the technology, test the user experience, and eventually go out in the public and go big and go bold. But innovative, smaller group, or a dedicated group in a region, because if you go global, you're going to need to provide those pixel streaming server globally. So that's going to be more and more challenges. But eventually, my thinking is the younger generation will not be satisfied with the video, will not be satisfied with pictures to buy a product, a car, an expensive product, watches or whatever. They will want to see it closely in 3D space. And I think that's the future for any large commercial vendors.
So you think that that's where the market is going to go? Or what do you think the status of the market is today, and where do you think we'll be 5, 7, 10 years in the future?
Like any tech, I've been in technology for 36 years, and there's not many, the process is pretty much always the same, right? You need at the same time a critical mass of interested prospect customers with the technology being somewhat affordable. When you cross that, supply demand. This is when that technology could become now obvious and mass market. Not mass market as in mass market product, but mass market as in the type of vendors who say, I'm gonna jump in. So the technology is almost there. The components are there, but to make it more affordable, to deploy it faster. Like if customers say, "Oh, I want to deploy 5,000 user in the next hour." Well, where are those GPU? And especially in a time where supply chain is constrained, the GPU is limited supply. Also on top of the supply, because of mining Bitcoin, we cannot get outside of that realm of very large deployment until we pass this time frame. So supply, the demand and supply, but also technology. So lowering the cost, but the cost factor is not the only factor. But cheaper technology at the same quality, and the critical mass of enough user that ask for it, right? It's very easy for me to say I'm not going to buy an expensive car by looking at the video on YouTube. I'm going to need something more, an experience, a user experience that's more rich. Okay, well, I can go to the dealer. I mean, there's nothing more, experience and emotion and then touching the car. But what about something in between? And we're going to need that number of enterprise that's going to say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to provide my prospect customer with an experience. And I had somebody who just told me this exact experience this long ago as a potential new car buyer, that his experience was pretty bad because he had to rely on people talking about their experience, but he couldn't get the vendor to provide him with the same experience. He had to provide his source were other customer who bought the product, and he wanted to have a direct link with the vendor. And I think that's going to move the needle when vendor will see that there's a big potential to help the buying experience.
Hmm. So do you think that there's going to be a trigger then for the market to really embrace pixel streaming, would you say? Or will it
Oh,
kind of
that's
be
a
a
crystal
little...
that's a crystal ball question.
Well, of course, we got to ask them, right?
Yeah. What is going to be the trigger? You know, if you go back in history, there's always going to be that a milestone that was the wow moment, the wow factor, right? And how many times technology have failed where there was a wow and then nothing, right? So I think this will become more obvious when the potential buyer, specifically the new generation who's been gaming all their life, is going to say, no, no, I want a better experience. So if they ask for it, I think that's going to be the big trigger for pixel streaming and similar technology to become way more popular, and then the rest will be history. But I think it's going to come from the potential buyer, not the vendors.
And I think that's an excellent point. And Pierre, we have actually come to the end of our show already.
Wow,
I know
already?
time flies when you're having fun. So Pierre, I
Yeah.
just want to say thank you so much for spending some time with us to share your wealth of knowledge. If anyone's interested, find Pierre on LinkedIn or daregraphic website. He is very, very knowledgeable, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Pierre. Thank you so much for swinging by and spending time sharing your thoughts with us.
Anytime, Quentin. You and I love having those chats, and I'm happy that this one is recorded out of the 50 we've done before. This one is for everybody to share.
I know this will serve as the proof of all of our
Yeah,
discussions that leading up
exactly.
until today. Uh,
Imagine when all this stuff is confidential, guys.
oh, I know. Sharing
We have fun.
our secret
Thanks so
sauce.
much for the time, Quentin. Really appreciate it.
Yep. So thank you everyone for stopping by. This is Real Time Talk with Eagle 3D Streaming. I'm your host, Quentin Anderson, and we